The world blurred around her as Simone Reynolds ran harder, tears mixing with sweat on her brown skin. Her lungs burned, but the pain felt right. Physical pain was easier than the crushing weight sitting on her chest. 3 days ago she lost her job. Yesterday, her landlord handed her an eviction notice. This morning, her car wouldn't start. She had $200 in her account and nowhere to go. The park was nearly empty at 6 in the morning. She didn't want anyone seeing her fall apart. Her bright red tank top clung to her as she pushed herself around the lake path one more time. Maybe if she ran fast enough, she could outrun the fear clawing at her throat. Her mother's voice echoed in her head, telling her to have faith that better days were coming. But right now, Simone couldn't see how. She slowed to a walk, chest heaving, and spotted a bench near the water. Someone had left their things there. A designer gym bag, a phone, and a sleek silver water bottle. Simone grabbed what she thought was her own bottle from the bench without looking. She was so thirsty, so tired, so desperate for something to go right. She drank deeply, the cold water soothing her parched throat. "That's mine." The voice was cold, cutting through the morning air like ice. Simone's eyes shot open. She looked down at the bottle in her hand. Wrong bottle. This one was metal and expensive looking, not her cheap plastic one. She looked up slowly, dread filling her stomach. A man stood 5 feet away, and Simone's breath caught for an entirely different reason. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair slightly damp from his own workout. He wore a fitted black athletic shirt and gray pants that probably cost more than her rent. But it was his face that made her freeze. Sharp jawline, intense gray eyes, and an expression so cold it could freeze the lake beside them. Even disheveled from exercise, he looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. An angry, beautiful magazine. "I'm so sorry," Simone stammered, looking at the bottle in horror. "I thought it was mine. I wasn't thinking. She held it out to him, her hand shaking slightly. "I'm really sorry." The man stared at her. His eyes were calculating, cold, taking in every detail of her face. Simone had seen that look in movies, the look powerful people gave those beneath them. She waited for him to tear into her, to call security, to do whatever men like him did when inconvenienced. But something strange happened. His expression flickered. For just a moment, the ice in his eyes cracked and something else showed through. Confusion maybe, or surprise. He looked at her like he was seeing something unexpected, something that didn't fit his understanding of the world. "Keep it," he said finally, his voice still cold but quieter now. "I don't want it back after." He gestured vaguely at her mouth. "Right, of course. I'm sorry." Simone wanted to sink into the ground. "Can I pay you for it? Or buy you a new one? I don't have much right now, but I can." She was rambling. She always rambled when nervous. "It's fine." He picked up his bag and phone, movements precise and controlled. Everything about him screamed discipline and control. "Forget it." He started to walk away. Simone should have let him go. Should have been grateful he didn't make a bigger deal of it. But something in his eyes, that brief crack in the ice, made her call out. "Are you okay?" He stopped, turned slowly, looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "What?" "You look sad," Simone said softly. "Behind all that." She gestured at his perfect, controlled exterior. "You look like you're carrying something heavy." For a long moment, Julian Masters, though Simone didn't know his name yet, simply stared at her. No one had asked him that in 5 years. No one looked past the cold exterior. No one dared. He was Julian Masters, billionaire CEO of Masters Tech Industries. People feared him, respected him, wanted things from him. But no one asked if he was okay. He started, then stopped. His jaw tightened. The walls came back up. "I'm fine. You should go." But he didn't move. Neither did she. They stood there as the sun began to rise over the lake. Two strangers connected by a shared bottle of water in a moment of unexpected honesty. Around them, the park began to wake up. Birds sang. Other joggers appeared on distant paths. The world kept turning, unaware that something had shifted. "I'm Simone," she offered, not sure why. "Simone Reynolds." He looked at her for another long moment. "Julian," he said finally. Just his first name, nothing more. He didn't offer his hand, didn't smile. But he'd given her his name, and somehow that felt significant. "Well, Julian," Simone said, managing a small smile despite everything crashing down around her. "I hope your day gets better. And sorry again about the water." She turned to leave, grabbing her actual water bottle from where she'd left it on the other end of the bench. As she walked away, she could feel his eyes on her back. It should have been creepy, but it wasn't. It felt curious, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. Simone made it halfway around the lake before she let herself cry again. She'd been kind to a stranger, but kindness wouldn't pay her rent. Hope and love wouldn't keep her off the streets. She was 28 years old, talented at her work, and completely out of options. In 7 days, she'd be evicted. She had no family in the city, just friends who were struggling as much as she was. She sat on another bench and put her face in her hands. What was she going to do? Behind her, hidden among the trees, Julian watched. He'd followed at a distance, not sure why. The woman, Simone, was crying. He could see her shoulders shaking. Something in his chest tightened painfully. He hadn't felt that sensation in years. Hadn't let himself feel anything in years. She'd asked if he was okay, seen past the armor he wore every day. And she was right. He was carrying something heavy. He'd been carrying it since the day his parents died in a plane crash, leaving him alone at 29 to run an empire. He built walls so high, so thick, that nothing could reach him anymore. Not joy, not pain, not anything. He existed in a gray space where nothing mattered except work and control. But this woman, this stranger who'd accidentally drunk his water, had cracked something. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Anderson," he said when his assistant answered. "I need you to run a background check." Simone Reynolds. "Yes, right now. Everything. Employment, address, situation. I want it in an hour." He ended the call and looked back at the bench, but Simone was gone. Julian stood there as the sun rose higher, wondering what he was doing. He didn't get involved in people's lives. He didn't care. Caring was dangerous. Caring led to pain. But he'd asked for the background check anyway. Later that morning, Julian sat in his corner office on the 40th floor of Masters Tower. His assistant, Thomas Anderson, placed a file on his desk. Julian opened it and read quickly. Simone Reynolds, 28, graphic designer, recently laid off, facing eviction, no family in the city. Talented, according to her portfolio. Good references from previous employers. Alone and scared, just like he'd been once, before he built his walls. Julian made another call. "Anderson, find Simone Reynolds. Bring her here. Tell her I have a job offer. Don't take no for an answer. Tell her it's important." "Sir?" Anderson's voice was shocked. Julian never did things like this. Never. "Just do it," Julian said, his voice returning to its usual cold tone. But inside, behind the ice, something was beginning to thaw. Have you ever felt so alone that one act of kindness could change everything? If this story touches your heart, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means the world. Simone was packing the few boxes of belongings she'd accumulated when her doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. The knock came again, more insistent. Through the peephole, she saw a man in an expensive suit holding a briefcase. Her stomach dropped. A lawyer? Already? The eviction wasn't for another week. She opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you?" "Simone Reynolds?" The man's voice was professional and neutral. "My name is Thomas Anderson. I work for Julian Masters. He'd like to see you." Simone blinked. "Julian who?" "Masters. You met him this morning in the park." Anderson held out a business card. It was heavy cardstock, expensive. It read, "Julian Masters, CEO, Masters Tech Industries." The world tilted slightly. That cold man from the park was Julian Masters. The Julian Masters. She'd seen his name in business articles on buildings around the city. He was one of the richest men in the country. One of the most feared. Known for being ruthless in business and completely unapproachable in person. And she'd drunk his water. Why would he want to see me?" Simone asked, confused. "He has a job offer for you." Anderson's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Like this was unusual behavior even for his boss. A job offer? But he doesn't know me. We barely spoke. Nevertheless, he's waiting. The car is downstairs. If you could come now, that would be preferable. Simone looked back at her apartment, at the half-packed boxes, at the eviction notice on her counter. Every instinct told her this was strange, possibly dangerous. You didn't just go with strangers because they offered jobs. But another part of her, the part her mother had raised to see kindness in the world, whispered that maybe this was the help she needed. Maybe this was hope arriving in an unexpected form. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Let me grab my purse." The car was a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years. Anderson held the door open, and Simone slid into leather seats so soft they felt like butter. The drive to Masters Tower took 20 minutes through morning traffic. Simone's hands twisted in her lap the whole way. Masters Tower was glass and steel, reaching up into the sky like a monument to success. Inside, everything was marble and modern art. People in expensive suits rushed past, all looking busy and important. Anderson led her to a private elevator that required a key card. They rode up in silence, Simone watching the city shrink below them. The 40th floor was quiet, elegant, intimidating. Anderson led her through a waiting area where a secretary looked up with barely concealed curiosity. They stopped at large double doors. Anderson knocked once, then opened them. "Ms. Reynolds, sir." Julian Masters stood by floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city. He changed into a navy blue suit that fit perfectly, his dark hair now styled. He looked every inch the powerful CEO. When he turned, his face was as cold and controlled as it had been in the park. "Thank you, Anderson. That will be all." The assistant left, closing the doors softly. Simone stood there, suddenly very aware of her old jeans and bright yellow t-shirt. She'd changed after her run but hadn't dressed for meeting billionaires. "Please sit." Julian gestured to chairs in front of his massive desk. Simone sat, her heart pounding. "Mr. Masters, I don't understand what this is about." Julian remained standing, his back to the window. The morning light created a halo effect around him, making it hard to see his face clearly. Maybe that was intentional. "I had you investigated," he said bluntly. "After this morning. I know you lost your job, that you're facing eviction, that you're talented but having difficulty finding new employment in this market." Simone's face flushed hot. "You investigated me? What? Because I accidentally drank your water? Because you saw me," Julian said, his voice quiet but intense. "Actually saw me. People don't do that. That doesn't explain why I'm here." Julian moved to his desk, pulled out a folder, and slid it across to her. "I'm offering you a position in my company's design department. Senior graphic designer. The salary is here." He pointed to a number on the paper. Simone looked at the number and felt dizzy. It was 3 times what she'd been making. Maybe 4 times. This is too much. It's the standard rate for that position. Julian's face remained expressionless. "I'm also prepared to advance you your first month's salary today, so you can pay your rent and not face eviction." "Why?" Simone looked up at him, searching for the catch. There had to be a catch. "You don't know me. You don't know my work. Why would you do this?" For the first time, something flickered across Julian's face. Not quite emotion, but a crack in the mask. "Because 5 years ago, when my parents died, I was alone and drowning and no one helped me. I built walls to keep everyone out. Made myself cold so nothing could hurt me. This morning you asked if I was okay. You saw past everything I've built. Maybe..." He paused, seeming to struggle with words. "Maybe I want to help someone who's drowning. Before they build walls too." Simone felt tears prick her eyes. This man, this cold, feared billionaire, was offering her a lifeline. Every practical bone in her body screamed to accept immediately. But she'd also been raised to question things that seemed too good to be true. "What do you get out of this?" she asked softly. Julian's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Honest, I appreciate that. I get a talented designer and the knowledge that I helped someone instead of..." He gestured vaguely. "Being what I've become. What if I'm not as good as you think? What if I can't do the job? Then we'll train you. The offer is genuine, Simone. No strings. You'll work, you'll be paid, you'll have the same opportunities and expectations as everyone else in that department." He pulled out another paper. "This is a standard employment contract. You can have a lawyer review it if you'd like. Take it home, think about it. And the advance on my salary? Available today if you accept. Your rent is $3,000 a month, correct? I'll have a check cut for that amount. You can pay your landlord, stay in your apartment, start work Monday." Simone looked at the papers in front of her, then at Julian. He stood there, controlled and cold, but she could see it now. The loneliness. The walls he'd built so high he couldn't see over them anymore. He was offering her help, but maybe he was also reaching out in the only way he knew how. Her mother's voice whispered in her head. "When help comes, accept it with grace. Kindness should be met with kindness. Hope exists in unexpected places." "Okay," Simone said, her voice stronger now. "Yes, I accept. Thank you, Mr. Masters. This means more than you know." Something changed in Julian's face. Not quite a smile, but a softening. "Julian. You can call me Julian." "Then thank you, Julian. I promise I'll work hard. I won't let you down." "I know," he said simply. Anderson returned as if summoned by magic. Julian gave him instructions about the check, about preparing her employment paperwork, about setting her up with the design team. It all happened so fast that Simone felt swept along by a current. But it was a good current, carrying her towards safety instead of drowning. As Anderson led her out, Simone paused at the door and looked back. Julian had returned to his position by the window, looking out over his empire. Alone again. On impulse she called back. "Julian?" He turned, eyebrows raised slightly. "Thank you for seeing me too." For just a moment, a real smile touched his lips. Small, barely there, but genuine. Then the mask returned, and he nodded once before turning back to the window. In the elevator, Anderson handed her an envelope. "Your advance, Ms. Reynolds. Mr. Masters wanted you to have it before you left." Simone opened it. A check for $3,000, plus an additional $1,000. She looked up questioningly. "He said you'd need more than just rent," Anderson explained, his professional mask slipping slightly. "For food, transportation, incidentals. In all the years I've worked for him, I've never seen him do anything like this. You must have made quite an impression. I just asked if he was okay." Anderson smiled, a real smile. "Exactly." As Simone left Masters Tower, check in hand, she felt the crushing weight begin to lift from her chest. She had a job. She could pay her rent. She had hope again. But more than that, she'd seen something in Julian Masters that made her curious. Behind all that ice was someone who'd been hurt badly enough to freeze himself solid. Someone who was reaching out in the only way he knew how. Maybe, she thought as she headed to the bank, maybe she could help him thaw. Maybe kindness could go both ways. She'd accepted his help with gratitude, just as her mother taught her. Now maybe she could offer him something in return. Not money or power, but the thing he seemed to need most. A reminder that he was human. That being cold wasn't the same as being strong. That letting people in didn't have to mean getting hurt. She had no idea if she could break through those walls. But she could try. And trying, her mother always said, was where hope lived. Monday morning arrived cold and bright. Simone stood outside Masters Tower at 7:30, wearing a professional blue dress she'd bought over the weekend with part of the extra money Julian had given her. Her portfolio was in hand, her heart racing. First day of work, nerves mixed with anticipation. She'd spent the weekend researching the company, practicing designs, preparing. But she'd also thought about Julian, about the sadness in his eyes, about his unexpected kindness. The design department was on the 22nd floor. When Simone stepped off the elevator, she was greeted by a bright, modern space. Glass-walled offices, open workstations, screens everywhere showing projects in progress. A woman in her 40s approached, smiling warmly. "You must be Simone. I'm Patricia Hamilton, head of the design department. Welcome to the team." Patricia shook her hand firmly. "Let me show you around." The tour was quick. Simone met her colleagues, all friendly but clearly curious about her. It wasn't every day someone was hired directly by the CEO himself. She could see the questions in their eyes, but no one asked directly. Patricia set her up at a workstation with a top-of-the-line computer and all the software she could need. "We're working on a rebranding project for one of our subsidiary companies," Patricia explained, pulling up files. "I'll start you with some preliminary concepts, let you get a feel for our style. Questions?" "Just one," Simone said. "Does Mr. Masters come down here often?" Patricia's expression shifted, became guarded. "Never. He stays on the 40th floor. We send work up for approval, but he doesn't interact with individual departments much." "Why?" "Just curious." But Simone was more than curious. She'd seen Julian's loneliness, his isolation. He built walls not just around his heart, but around his entire existence. He lived up in his tower, alone, while life happened below him. The morning flew by. Simone lost herself in design work, creating concepts, revising, experimenting. It felt good to work again, to use her skills. Around noon, Patricia suggested she take lunch in the executive cafeteria. Simone grabbed a sandwich and coffee, then made a decision that was either brave or stupid. She took the elevator to the 40th floor. Anderson looked up in surprise when she stepped out. "Ms. Reynolds, did you need something?" "I brought coffee." Simone held up 2 cups from the cafeteria. "Is Julian, is Mr. Masters available?" Anderson's expression was priceless. Shock, confusion, and something like concern. He doesn't usually, that is, Mr. Masters doesn't take unscheduled meetings." "I'm not asking for a meeting. I'm bringing him coffee." Simone smiled. "If he's too busy, I'll leave it with you. But I thought maybe he could use a break." Anderson stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. "Wait here." He disappeared through the double doors, returning a minute later looking bemused. "He'll see you." 5 minutes. Simone entered Julian's office. He sat behind his desk, surrounded by papers and screens. When he looked up, his face was its usual mask of control, but she caught a flicker of surprise. "Simone, is something wrong? Problems with the position?" "No, everything's great." She walked forward and set a coffee on his desk. "I just thought you might need this. Black, right? You seem like a black coffee person." Julian looked at the coffee like it might explode. "You came up here to bring me coffee. Is that weird?" Simone asked, suddenly uncertain. "Sorry, I can go." "No." The word was sharp, then softer. "No, stay. It's just, no one does things like that." "Well, someone should." Simone sat down without being invited, which made Julian's eyebrows rise. "How's your day going?" "My day?" He seemed confused by the question. "Yeah. Good meetings? Bad meetings? Solve any major corporate problems?" Julian leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You're not afraid of me." "Should I be? Everyone else is." "Everyone else hasn't seen you at 6 in the morning, sad by a lake." Simone sipped her own coffee. "Hard to be scared of someone when you've seen them human." Something shifted in Julian's face. He picked up the coffee, took a sip, and some of the tension left his shoulders. "Thank you for the coffee." "You're welcome. I should get back to work. Patricia has me on a rebranding project." "It's interesting. You're settling in well?" "I am. Everyone's been nice. The work is challenging in a good way." "You were right about the opportunity." She stood. "Thank you again, Julian. For all of it." As she walked to the door, Julian called after her. "Simone." She turned. "You were right too. About me carrying something heavy." He paused, seeming to struggle with words. "It's been a long time since anyone tried to lighten that load." "Maybe you've just been making it hard for people to try," Simone said gently. "Walls keep things out, but they also keep you in." She left before he could respond. In the elevator, she let out a long breath. That had been bold, maybe too bold. But her instincts told her Julian needed someone to treat him normally, to see him as a person instead of a powerful CEO to be feared. Over the following days, Simone made it a habit. Every day around noon, she'd bring 2 coffees to the 40th floor. Anderson stopped looking surprised after the 3rd day. Julian never turned her away. Their conversations were brief, 5 or 10 minutes, but each day he seemed a little less cold, a little more human. She learned things about him in these short conversations. That he worked 80-hour weeks because being alone in his empty penthouse felt worse than being alone in his office. That he'd loved painting when he was younger but hadn't touched a brush in 5 years. That his parents had been warm, loving people, and their death had shattered something in him he didn't know how to fix. "You freeze yourself so you can't feel the pain," Simone observed one day. "But you also can't feel anything good either." "There isn't much good to feel," Julian said, his voice flat. "There's always good. You just have to let yourself see it." One morning, Simone arrived at work to find a small package on her desk. Inside was a set of professional design pencils, top of the line, expensive. The note was simple, in precise handwriting. "I noticed you sketched preliminary concepts by hand. These might help." Her throat tightened. He noticed, despite his coldness, despite his walls, he paid attention to how she worked. Simone held the pencils carefully, then pulled out a sticky note. She wrote quickly, "Thank you. These are perfect. You notice more than you think you do. That's a good thing." She went up to the 40th floor, but Julian was in meetings. She left the note with Anderson to put on his desk. The next day, she found a reply stuck to her computer monitor. "Your coffee breaks are the best part of my days. Don't stop." Something warm bloomed in Simone's chest. Progress. She was making progress. The ice was cracking bit by bit. Julian was still cold to everyone else, still the feared CEO who ran his empire with iron control. But with her, in those brief moments, he was becoming something else, something softer. By the end of her 2nd week, other employees started noticing changes. Julian's emails were less curt. He remembered the name of a staff member in a meeting. Small things, tiny cracks in the wall, but noticeable. Patricia pulled Simone aside one afternoon. "I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. Mr. Masters seems different lately, less frightening. It's making everyone's lives easier." Simone just smiled. She wasn't doing anything special. She was just treating a lonely person with kindness, with hope, with the belief that ice could melt if you were patient enough. That Friday, she found another note on her desk. This time, it made her heart skip. "There's an art gallery opening tomorrow night. Modern Collection. I have tickets. Would you come with me? No pressure, but I think you'd enjoy it. Simone held the note, reading it 3 times. Julian was asking her out. Not quite a date, but not just professional either. He was reaching out, trying to connect beyond their coffee conversations. This was big, a huge step for someone who'd isolated himself for 5 years. She wrote back immediately, "I'd love to. Thank you for inviting me. What time?" His response came within minutes. 7. I'll pick you up. And Simone, thank you for everything. Simone tucked the note into her purse, smiling. The ice was definitely melting. And underneath it, she was beginning to see who Julian really was. Not the cold CEO, not the feared billionaire, but a man who'd been hurt and was slowly, carefully learning to feel again. Kindness, her mother always said, could change the world. Simone was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, it could also change a heart. Saturday evening found Simone standing in front of her closet, trying not to panic. What did one wear to an art gallery opening with a billionaire? She'd never been to anything like that. Her wardrobe consisted mostly of casual clothes and work attire, nothing fancy enough for high society. Her phone rang. Her mother, calling from across the country for their weekly check-in. "Baby girl," her mother's warm voice filled the line. "How's the new job?" Simone sat on her bed, suddenly needing to talk. "It's good, Mama. Really good. But something's happening and I'm not sure what to make of it." She told her mother everything. About Julian, about his coldness and hidden pain, about the coffee breaks and notes, about tonight's invitation. Her mother listened quietly, making small encouraging sounds. "Sounds to me like you're melting his heart," her mother said finally. "And he's returning to kindness. That's good, baby. That's how it should be. But what if I'm reading too much into it? What if he just wants a friend? Then be his friend. Stop overthinking." Her mother's voice was gentle but firm. "You got a good heart, Simone. You showed that man kindness when he needed it, and now he's trying to show you the same. Just let things happen naturally. Wear something that makes you feel confident, be yourself, and see where the evening goes. I love you, Mama." "Love you too, baby. Call me tomorrow and tell me all about it." Simone hung up feeling calmer. She chose a simple green dress, fitted but not too formal, that brought out the warmth in her brown skin. Small silver earrings, natural makeup, her hair in soft curls. When she looked in the mirror, she saw confidence looking back. At exactly 7, her doorbell rang. Simone grabbed her small purse and opened the door. Her breath caught. Julian stood in the hallway wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit with a dark green tie that almost matched her dress. His dark hair was styled, his gray eyes bright. But it was his expression that made her heart skip. He wasn't wearing his cold mask. He looked nervous, genuinely nervous. "Hi," he said, his voice softer than she'd heard it in the office. "You look beautiful." "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." Simone smiled, trying to ease his obvious tension. "Ready to go look at art?" "More than ready." He offered his arm, a formal gesture that somehow felt right. The car was waiting downstairs, the same black sedan from before. But this time Julian sat beside her in the back seat instead of working on his phone. He seemed uncertain, like he was out of practice at normal social interaction, which Simone realized he probably was. "I haven't been to a gallery opening in 5 years, Julian admitted as they drove through the city. Not since my parents died. They loved art, loved culture. My mother used to drag my father and me to every opening, every exhibit. She said art made us better humans." "She sounds wonderful." She was. Julian's voice softened. They both were. "When they died, I stopped doing everything they loved. It hurt too much to remember. And now I think maybe hiding from good memories because they hurt is worse than having no memories at all." He looked at her. "You make me want to remember the good things again." Simone's chest tightened with emotion. "I'm glad." The gallery was in a renovated warehouse in the arts district. Outside, well-dressed people mingled, champagne glasses in hand. Simone felt momentarily intimidated, but Julian's hand at the small of her back, gentle and reassuring, steadied her. "Stay with me," he murmured. "Most of these people are boring anyway." Inside, the gallery was stunning. White walls, perfect lighting, modern pieces that range from sculptures to digital installations. Julian grabbed 2 champagne flutes from a passing waiter and handed her one. They began to walk through the exhibits. The change in Julian was remarkable. His face, usually so controlled and cold, became animated as he discussed the pieces. He knew artists' techniques, movements. His gray eyes lit up with genuine interest. This wasn't the feared CEO. This was someone passionate about something beyond balance sheets and corporate strategy. You really love this, Simone observed, watching him study a large abstract painting. I used to paint, Julian said, not taking his eyes from the canvas. Nothing like this, just sketches and landscapes. My mother encouraged it. Said the company could run without me sometimes, but art fed the soul. He turned to her. I gave it up when they died. Packed away all my supplies. Haven't touched them since. That's sad. I thought it was necessary. Now I'm not sure. He gestured to the painting. What do you think of this piece? Simone studied it. Bold strokes of blue and gold, chaotic yet somehow harmonious. It feels like a storm and sunshine fighting for space. Like they're trying to coexist instead of one destroying the other. Julian smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. That's exactly what the artist intended. You have a good eye. They spent 2 hours wandering the gallery talking about art, life, everything and nothing. Julian introduced her to a few people, always keeping her close, always making sure she felt included. Simone noticed how people looked at them, curious and surprised. Julian masters at a social event, actually smiling with a woman they didn't recognize. It would be gossip fuel for weeks. But Julian didn't seem to care. He was focused on her, on the art, on actually enjoying himself. At one point, he took her hand naturally, their fingers intertwining like it was the most normal thing in the world. Simone's heart raced, but she didn't pull away. They stopped in front of a sculpture, two figures reaching for each other across an impossible divide. Julian stared at it for a long moment, his hand tightening slightly around hers. That's how I felt for 5 years, he said quietly. Like I was on one side of a divide and the rest of the world was on the other. Unreachable. And now? Simone asked softly. Now I feel like maybe the divide isn't as wide as I thought. That maybe someone built a bridge I didn't notice. He looked at her, his eyes intense. You built that bridge, Simone. With coffee and kindness and refusing to be scared of me. I'm not scared because there's nothing to be scared of. You're not as cold as you pretend to be. I'm working on that. Being less cold. He paused. It's harder than I thought. 5 years of keeping everyone out is a tough habit to break. Good things are usually hard, Simone said. Worth it though. They left the gallery around 10, stepping into the cool night air. The city was alive with Saturday night energy, people laughing and talking, life happening everywhere. Julian didn't let go of her hand as they walked to the car. Are you hungry? He asked. There's a quiet restaurant near here. We could get dessert. That sounds perfect. The restaurant was small and intimate, nothing like the expensive places Simone imagined Julian usually frequented. They sat in a corner booth, ordered coffee and cake, and talked for another hour. Julian asked about her life, her childhood, her dreams. He listened carefully, asking questions, genuinely interested. My mother raised me alone after my dad died, Simone explained. We didn't have much money, but we had love. She taught me to see the good in people, to offer kindness even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She sounds like an amazing woman. She is. She's the reason I asked if you were okay that morning in the park. Because she taught me that everyone's carrying something heavy, and sometimes all people need is for someone to notice. Julian reached across the table, covering her hand with his. I'm glad you noticed. When he dropped her off at her apartment building, Julian walked her to the door. They stood in the hallway, neither wanting the evening to end. Thank you, Julian said, for tonight. For making me remember how to enjoy something again. Thank you for inviting me. I had a wonderful time. They stood there, close enough that Simone could see gold flecks in his gray eyes. For a moment she thought he might kiss her. But instead, he lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles softly, an old-fashioned gesture that made her heart flutter. Good night, Simone. Good night, Julian. She watched him walk away, her hand tingling where his lips had touched. Inside her apartment, she leaned against the door, smiling. Tonight had been magic. She'd seen Julian truly happy for the first time, seen him let his guard down completely. The ice was melting faster now, revealing someone warm and passionate and wonderful underneath. Her phone buzzed. A text from Julian, thank you again. Tonight reminded me what it feels like to be alive. Sleep well. Simone responded, you deserve to feel alive. See you Monday for coffee? I'll look forward to it. As Simone got ready for bed, she thought about the sculpture of two figures reaching across a divide. Maybe she had built a bridge. Or maybe they built it together, one small gesture at a time. Coffee breaks and notes, art galleries and honest conversations. Little things that added up to something bigger. Hope, her mother always said, lived in small moments. Tonight had been full of them, and tomorrow would bring more. The ice was melting, and underneath it, something beautiful was beginning to grow. Love, Simone thought as she drifted off to sleep. Maybe this was how love began. Not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with kindness, patience, and two people brave enough to cross the divide. Monday morning brought changes to the 40th floor. Anderson noticed it first. Julian arrived at 7 instead of his usual 6:30, and he was humming. In all his years working for Julian Masters, Anderson had never once heard the man hum. "Good morning, Anderson," Julian said, actually smiling. "Good morning, sir. You seem well rested." "I am." Julian paused at his office door. "When Simone comes up for coffee, send her right in. I don't care what I'm doing." Anderson blinked. "Of course, sir." But Simone didn't come at her usual time. 11 o'clock passed, then noon. Julian kept glancing at his door. By 12:30 he was frowning. Anderson knocked quietly. "Ms. Reynolds hasn't come up, sir. Should I call down?" "No," Julian said quickly, then paused. "Is she at work? Is she okay? I can check." But before Anderson could leave, Julian's phone buzzed. A text from Simone. "Sorry, crazy morning. Project deadline. Rain check on coffee? Maybe lunch tomorrow?" Julian typed back, "No problem. How about I bring coffee to you for once?" The response came quickly, "You don't have to do that. I want to." 20 minutes later, Julian Masters walked onto the design floor carrying 2 coffees. The entire department fell silent. Their CEO, the man who never left the 40th floor, who they'd only seen in photos and brief video calls, was standing in their workspace. Patricia Hamilton recovered first. "Mr. Masters, this is unexpected. How can we help you?" "I'm looking for Simone's desk," Julian said, scanning the room. "Over there, sir." Patricia pointed, her face carefully neutral but her eyes wide with curiosity. Julian walked through the silent office to where Simone sat, headphones on, absorbed in her work. She was sketching something on her tablet, her face scrunched in concentration. Julian smiled. She looked adorable when she was focused. He set the coffee beside her keyboard. Simone jumped, pulling off her headphones. "Julian?" She looked shocked. "What are you doing here?" "You couldn't come up for coffee, so I brought coffee down." He pulled over a rolling chair and sat. "What are you working on?" Simone glanced around at their audience. The entire department was pretending to work while obviously watching them. She laughed. "You're causing quite a scene." "Am I?" Julian looked around as if just noticing. "I suppose I don't come down here often." "Try never," Patricia interjected from her office. "Well, that's going to change." Julian turned back to Simone. "Show me what you're working on." For the next 15 minutes, Simone explained her project while Julian asked questions and offered suggestions. He knew more about design than she'd expected, had insights that actually helped. Around them, the department slowly relaxed, returning to work but with a new energy. If the CEO could be human, maybe the company wasn't as cold and corporate as they thought. When Julian finally stood to leave, Simone walked him to the elevator. "You know everyone's going to talk about this for weeks. Let them. I'm tired of hiding on the 40th floor like some kind of isolated dictator." He pressed the elevator button. "Besides, I wanted to see you. You'll see me tomorrow. I'll come up like always." "I know, but I couldn't wait that long." The elevator doors opened. Julian stepped in but held them open. "Simone, I've been thinking. I want to show you something. Would you come somewhere with me after work? Somewhere important." "Of course. Where?" "You'll see. Meet me in the lobby at 6. "Okay," Simone agreed, curious but trusting. At 6, Julian led her to his car. They drove out of the city, heading toward the suburbs. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. After 30 minutes, they pulled up to a large community center in a neighborhood that had clearly seen better days. "What is this place?" Simone asked as they got out. "This was my parents' main charity project," Julian explained, his voice soft. They believed in supporting communities that needed it most. This center provides after-school programs, job training, meals for seniors, art classes for kids. Everything. When they died, I kept funding it, but I never came back. Couldn't face it. And now I think it's time. I called ahead. They're expecting us. He took her hand. "Come meet the people my parents loved." Inside, the center was warm and bustling. Kids doing homework in one corner, art classes in another room, adults learning computer skills down the hall. A woman in her 60s approached, her face lighting up when she saw Julian. Julian Masters. As I live and breathe. We haven't seen you since the funeral. She pulled him into a hug. Your parents would be so happy to see you here. Hello, Mrs. Garcia. This is Simone Reynolds. Simone, this is Rosa Garcia. She runs this place. Welcome, dear. Rosa smiled warmly at Simone. Come, let me show you around. We've expanded thanks to Julian's continued support. The tour was eye-opening. The center helped hundreds of people every week. There were art supplies everywhere, donated computers, a small library, a kitchen where volunteers prepared meals. There was love in action, the kind of practical kindness that changed lives. They stopped by an art class where kids were painting. When they saw Julian, several rushed over. Mr. Masters, did you come to paint with us? A little girl, maybe 8, tugged on his jacket. Julian looked uncertain. I don't paint anymore, Elena. Why not? Mrs. Garcia says you used to be really good. Julian glanced at Simone, who smiled encouragingly. Maybe I could sit in for a bit. Elena cheered and dragged him to an empty easel. Simone sat beside him, taking a brush of her own. For the next hour, they painted with the children, laughing at messy attempts, praising creative interpretations. Julian was rusty, but the joy on his face was unmistakable. This was who he used to be, Simone realized, before grief built walls around him. When the class ended, Julian looked at his painting. A simple landscape, rough but full of feeling. I forgot how much I missed this. Your parents would be proud, Rosa said softly, appearing beside them. Not just of your success, but of you coming back here. Of you painting again. Julian's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Thank you, Mrs. Garcia, for keeping this place going, for carrying on their work. It's our honor. And Julian, you're welcome here anytime. These kids would love to have you back. In the car on the way back to the city, Julian was quiet. Simone didn't push, just held his hand. Finally he spoke. I avoided that place because it hurt too much. All those memories of my parents, their passion for helping people. I thought if I stayed away, built walls, focused only on business, the pain would stop. He looked at her. But it didn't stop. It just made everything gray and empty. And now I want to go back. I want to paint with those kids. I want to remember my parents not through pain but through continuing what they loved. He paused. You've changed something in me, Simone. Made me want to feel again even if it hurts sometimes. Feeling means you're alive, Simone said softly. Hurt is just part of that. But so is joy, love, connection. You can't have one without risking the others. Julian pulled into her apartment building but didn't let go of her hand. I want to do something. The center needs renovations, new equipment. I've been sending money but not paying attention to what they actually need. Would you help me? Look at their programs, figure out what would make the biggest difference. You want me to help you with charity work? I want you to help me be better. You're good at seeing what people need, at connecting with them. I'm good at writing checks but terrible at the human part. Together we could actually make a real difference. Simone felt warmth spread through her chest. This was huge. Julian was opening up, letting her into a part of his life he'd kept locked away for 5 years. I'd love to help. Julian leaned across the console, his face close to hers. Thank you for everything, for seeing past the walls, for being patient with me, for making me want to be the person I used to be. You don't have to thank me for that. I just showed you what was always there. This time, when Julian leaned in, he didn't stop. His lips met hers softly, carefully, like he was learning something new. Simone kissed him back, her heart racing. It was gentle, sweet, full of promise. When they pulled apart, Julian was smiling. I've wanted to do that since the art gallery, he admitted. What took you so long? Fear. But I'm tired of being afraid. He kissed her again, a little less carefully this time. When Simone finally went inside, she felt like she was floating. Julian was changing, opening up, letting himself feel again. The ice was melting, and underneath it was someone wonderful. Someone kind and passionate and capable of deep love, even if he'd forgotten how. Her phone buzzed. Julian, I'm falling for you, Simone. Just thought you should know. She smiled, typing back, good. I'm falling too. As she got ready for bed, Simone thought about the community center, about Julian painting with children, about the joy returning to his eyes. Hope and love were winning, just like her mother always said they would. Kindness was transforming a cold heart into something warm again, and she got to be part of that transformation. What could be more beautiful than that? The following weeks brought a shift not just in Julian, but in the entire company. Employees who used to scatter when Julian approached now greeted him cautiously. He'd started walking the floors every few days, actually talking to people, asking names, remembering details. The change was slow but noticeable. Simone watched it happen with quiet pride. Julian was working on being more human, more present. It wasn't always smooth. Sometimes he'd slip back into cold CEO mode, bark an order, then catch himself and soften his tone. But he was trying, and trying mattered. Their coffee breaks became the anchor of both their days. Sometimes Julian came down to her floor, sometimes she went up to his. Either way, they spent 30 minutes together, talking about everything from work projects to childhood memories. The walls between them crumbled bit by bit. One Wednesday, Simone mentioned she was volunteering at the community center that Saturday, teaching a beginner's art class. "I'll come with you," Julian said immediately. "You sure? It's early. 8 in the morning. I'll be there." His gray eyes were determined. "I told Mrs. Garcia I'd be back. Time to follow through." Saturday morning, Julian picked her up in casual clothes. Jeans, a blue pullover sweater. He looked younger, more relaxed. Different from the suited CEO she saw at work. They stopped for coffee and bagels on the way, Julian insisting on buying enough for all the kids in the class. At the center, Mrs. Garcia greeted them warmly. "Look who came back. The kids will be thrilled." The art room filled quickly. 15 children between ages 6 and 12, all excited to paint. Simone set up supplies while Julian helped arrange easels. She noticed how naturally he interacted with the kids now, remembering names from his previous visit, asking about their projects. "Okay everyone," Simone called out. "Today we're painting happiness. What does happiness look like to you?" The answers varied. Dogs, sunshine, family dinners, playgrounds. Julian stood at the back watching Simone work. She was patient with each child, encouraging, making them feel capable. Her bright red shirt seemed to glow in the morning light streaming through windows. She was in her element, giving hope and confidence to these kids. "Mr. Masters?" A boy of about 10 tugged his sleeve. "Are you going to paint too?" Julian hesitated, then smiled. "Yeah, Carlos, I think I will." He set up an easel next to Simone's. For the next 2 hours, they painted alongside the children. Julian's painting started as formless colors, but gradually a face emerged. Simone's face, smiling, surrounded by warm yellows and oranges. "That's beautiful," Simone said softly, looking over his shoulder. Julian glanced at her, something vulnerable in his expression. "It's you. You're what happiness looks like to me." Simone's breath caught. Around them, kids were focused on their own work, oblivious to the moment happening between the two adults. "Julian, I mean it." He set down his brush. 5 years of gray, empty existence. Then you walked into my life by accident, drank my water, asked if I was okay. And suddenly there's color again. Joy. Purpose beyond just work. You brought that. We brought that together, Simone corrected gently. You let me in. That took courage. After the class, they helped clean up. Mrs. Garcia pulled Simone aside while Julian was washing brushes with some kids. "He's different," Rosa observed. "Lighter. Haven't seen him smile like that since before his parents passed. You're good for him, dear." "He's good for me too," Simone said. "He gave me a chance when I needed it most. Now we're giving each other something even better." "What's that?" "Oh, the belief that better days are possible." That afternoon, Julian suggested a walk in the park. The same park where they first met. They walked hand in hand around the lake, the October air crisp but pleasant. "I want to tell you something," Julian said as they approached the bench where he'd been sitting that morning weeks ago. "About why I became so cold." They sat down. Simone waited, giving him space to gather his thoughts. "When my parents died, it wasn't just grief," Julian began, his voice low. "There was guilt. They were flying to visit me to surprise me for my birthday. I'd been too busy working to call them that week. Too caught up in a deal to make time for family." His jaw tightened. "If they hadn't been coming to see me, they'd still be alive." "Julian, no." Simone turned to face him. "That's not your fault. Accidents happen. You can't control everything. I know that here." He tapped his head. "But here?" He pressed his hand to his chest. "Here I blamed myself. So I shut down. Figured if I didn't let anyone close, didn't care about anything except work, I couldn't hurt anyone else. Couldn't be the reason someone got hurt. But you were hurting yourself," Simone said softly. "Punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault. For 5 years. built walls so high I couldn't see over them anymore. He looked at her, his eyes bright with emotion. Then you came along with your kindness and your coffee and your refusal to be scared of me. You didn't try to break the walls down. You just kept showing up until I wanted to let you in. Everyone deserves connection, Julian. Everyone deserves love. Even someone as cold as I was? You were never really cold. Just hurt and scared. Simone took his hand. And you're not that person anymore. Look at what you did today. You painted with kids. You laughed. You let yourself be happy. That's not cold. That's healing. Julian pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. They sat like that for a long moment, holding each other. Around them, the park was alive with autumn colors, with people jogging and children playing and life happening everywhere. I'm falling in love with you, Julian whispered against her hair. I didn't think I'd ever feel this way about anyone. Didn't think I was capable anymore. But you've changed that. Changed me. Simone pulled back to look at him. I love you too. Have for a while now, actually. Julian's smile was brilliant, transforming his face completely. He kissed her there on the bench, deep and passionate, not caring who saw. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless and smiling. So what happens now? Julian asked. Now we keep going. Keep growing. Keep choosing hope and love instead of fear. Simone traced his jaw with her fingers. Now we build something beautiful together. I like the sound of that. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the park talking about everything. Julian shared stories about his parents, good memories that made him laugh instead of hurt. Simone talked about her dreams, her hopes for the future. They made plans for the community center, for expanding programs, for making a real difference. As the sun began to set, Julian received a call. A work emergency, something that needed his attention immediately. Old Julian would have rushed off without a word. New Julian looked at Simone apologetically. I'm sorry. I have to handle this. But can I see you tomorrow? Maybe dinner? Dinner sounds perfect, Simone agreed. Go handle your emergency. I'll be here when you're done. Julian kissed her forehead. That's what I'm counting on. Watching him leave, Simone felt contentment settle over her. They were building something real, something lasting. Two broken people finding wholeness in each other. It wasn't always easy. Julian still struggled with opening up completely, still had moments where his cold mask snapped back into place. But he was working on it, and that effort meant everything. Her phone buzzed. A text from Julian, already missing you. Tomorrow can't come fast enough. She smiled, typing back, me too. But good things are worth waiting for. You're worth everything. As Simone headed home, she thought about how much life had changed in just a few weeks. From unemployed and facing eviction to employed and falling in love with a billionaire who was learning to be human again. It sounded like a fairy tale, but it was real. As real as the connection they'd built, the trust they'd earned, the love that was growing stronger every day. Hope and love were leading just like they should. And the best part? This was just the beginning. They had so much more ahead of them, so many more moments to share, so many more walls to tear down together. Life, Simone thought as she unlocked her apartment door, was full of surprises. Sometimes you accidentally drank a billionaire's water, and it changed everything. Sometimes kindness opened doors you didn't even know existed. Sometimes the coldest hearts held the warmest love underneath. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you got to help someone find their way back to joy. That was the greatest gift of all. Sunday evening brought butterflies to Simone's stomach. Julian was cooking dinner for her at his penthouse. It was intimate, personal in a way their previous dates hadn't been. He was inviting her into his private space, the place where he lived alone, surrounded by walls both literal and emotional. She chose a deep maroon dress that her mother had sent her last birthday, paired with simple jewelry. Professional enough to be respectful, but soft enough to be approachable. When she looked in the mirror, she saw confidence and happiness reflected back. The car arrived at 7 sharp. The drive to Julian's building took them to the most expensive part of the city. His building was all glass and steel, modern and imposing. A doorman greeted them, clearly familiar with Julian but surprised to see him with a guest. Good evening, Mr. Masters. Mississippi. Evening, Robert. Simone is my guest for dinner. The private elevator required both a key card and a code. It rose smoothly to the top floor, opening directly into Julian's penthouse. Simone stepped out and her breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city sprawling below her. The interior was modern but warm, with comfortable furniture in deep blues and grays. Art covered the walls, pieces Simone recognized from famous artists. But what caught her attention most was the complete lack of personal touches. No photos, no mementos, nothing that said a human actually lived here. It was beautiful but sterile, like a high-end hotel suite. Julian watched her take it all in, his expression uncertain. I know it's impersonal. I never bothered making it a home. Just a place to sleep between work. We can fix that, Simone said gently. Homes are built, not bought. Something in Julian's face relaxed. Come on, dinner's almost ready. The kitchen was professional grade, all stainless steel and modern appliances. Julian had clearly been cooking for a while. Something smelled amazing. He changed into dark slacks and a deep blue button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Casual but still put together. Very Julian. You really do cook, Simone observed, perching on a bar stool. My mother insisted I learn. Said no child of hers would be helpless in a kitchen. Julian stirred something on the stove. I haven't cooked for anyone in 5 years. Haven't really cooked for myself either. Mostly takeout and whatever my housekeeper leaves in the fridge. So why tonight? Julian looked at her, his gray eyes intense. Because you deserve more than a fancy restaurant. Because I wanted to do something personal for you. Because, he paused. Because I want you to know me, really know me. Not just the CEO or the guy who brings you coffee. The person underneath all that. I already know that person, Simone said softly. The one who paints with kids and opens up slowly and is learning to be vulnerable. I love that person. Even though he's still figuring things out, still makes mistakes. Especially because of that. Perfect is boring. Real is beautiful. Julian smiled, some tension leaving his shoulders. Wine, please. He poured them both glasses of red wine, something expensive Simone didn't recognize. They talked while he finished cooking, easy conversation that flowed naturally. He told her about learning to cook from his mother, about burned dinners and kitchen disasters and eventually getting it right. She shared stories from her own childhood, her mother's tiny kitchen where they'd made magic with limited ingredients and unlimited love. Dinner was pan-seared salmon with roasted vegetables and risotto. It was delicious, restaurant quality. They ate at a small table by the windows, the city lights twinkling below like fallen stars. This is amazing, Simone said after her first bite. You're really good at this. I had a good teacher. Julian's expression turned wistful. My mother would be happy to see me cooking again. She always said food was love made visible. She sounds wise. She was. They both were. My father used to say that success without connection was just expensive loneliness. Julian looked around his penthouse. Took me 5 years to understand what he meant. After dinner, Julian led her to his living room. To Simone's surprise, an old record player sat in the corner, surrounded by vinyl albums. He put on something slow and jazzy, then held out his hand. Dance with me? Simone took his hand, letting him pull her close. They swayed together to the music, her head on his chest, his arms around her. The city sparkled below them, but neither was looking at the view. They were too focused on each other, on this moment, on the connection humming between them. I need to tell you something, Julian murmured. I'm not good at this. At relationships, at being vulnerable, at letting someone see the real me. I'm going to mess up sometimes. Get cold when I'm scared. Pull away when things get too intense. But I want you to know that I'm trying. That you're important enough to me that I want to do the hard work of being better. Simone looked up at him. I know relationships are scary when you've been hurt, but I'm not going anywhere. When you get cold, I'll remind you to warm up. When you pull away, I'll give you space but stay close enough that you remember I'm here. That's what love is. Showing up, especially when it's hard. How did you get so wise? Julian asked, touching her cheek gently. My mother, and life, and you actually. Watching you fight to be more open has taught me that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the scary thing anyway. Julian kissed her then, deep and passionate, pouring everything he felt into that kiss. Need, love, gratitude, hope. Simone kissed him back just as intensely, her arms around his neck, holding him close. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Stay with me tonight, Julian whispered. Not for, just stay. Let me fall asleep with you here. Let me wake up not alone for once. Okay, Simone agreed softly. They moved to his bedroom, which was as impersonal as the rest of the penthouse. Julian lent her a shirt to sleep in. They lay together in his massive bed, wrapped around each other, talking quietly as the city lights cast patterns on the ceiling. Tell me something nobody knows about you, Simone requested. Julian was quiet for a moment. Sometimes I talk to my parents, out loud when I'm alone. Tell them about my day, about decisions I'm making. Ask for advice I'll never hear. His voice was rough with emotion. I know it's weird. It's not weird. It's beautiful. It means they're still with you in the ways that matter. Tell me something about you. Simone thought carefully. Sometimes I'm scared this is all too good to be true. That I'll wake up and you'll be cold again, that this was just a temporary thought. I know that's my fear talking, not reality, but it's there. Julian tightened his arms around her. I understand that fear. I have it too. That I'll mess this up so badly you'll leave me. But I'm not capable of being what you need. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. But we can be scared together and keep choosing each other anyway. They talked for hours, sharing fears and dreams, past hurts and future hopes. Outside, the city slept and woke and slept again. Inside, two people grew closer with every honest word, every vulnerable admission. Eventually, they drifted off, wrapped in each other's arms. Julian fell asleep to the sound of Simone's breathing, feeling peace for the first time in 5 years. Simone fell asleep knowing she was exactly where she needed to be. Morning came gently. Simone woke to find Julian watching her, his expression soft and open. "Hi," he whispered. "Hi yourself. I made coffee, and I had bagels from the place downstairs." They had breakfast in bed, laughing and talking easily. This was domestic intimacy, simple and profound. Julian in sleep-rumpled clothes, hair messy, completely relaxed. This was the man behind all the walls, and he was wonderful. "I don't want this to end," Julian admitted as they finally got up. "I want more mornings like this. Then let's have them. As many as we can." Julian drove her home, both reluctant to separate. At her door, he kissed her lingeringly. "Thank you," he said, "for staying. For seeing me at my most vulnerable and not running away. Thank you for letting me in. For trusting me with the real you." As Simone got ready for work later, her phone rang. Her mother, calling for their usual Sunday chat, even though it was Monday morning. "You sound different," her mother observed after they'd talked for a few minutes. "Happy different." "I'm happy, Mom. Really happy." "Tell me about him." So Simone did. She told her mother everything about Julian's walls coming down, about painting with kids, about last night's dinner and vulnerable conversations. Her mother listened carefully. "Baby girl, that man loves you. Truly loves you. Not just attraction or convenience. Real deep love. You can hear it in everything you've told me. I love him too. So much it's scary sometimes. That's how you know it's real. Love that matters is always a little scary. But scary doesn't mean wrong. Sometimes the best things in life require the most courage. You raised me to believe in hope and love leading the way. I did. And look at you now. You chose kindness when you could have chosen bitterness after losing your job. You chose hope when you could have chosen despair. And because of those choices, you found something beautiful. That's how it's supposed to work, baby." After they hung up, Simone sat in her quiet apartment, feeling grateful. Life had brought her to Julian in the strangest way. A mistaken bottle of water had led to coffee dates, art galleries, community centers, and now this deep, real love with someone who was learning to be vulnerable again. Have you ever been afraid to open your heart again after being hurt? Subscribe and share your story in the comments. We're all learning to be brave together. They were both still works in progress, still learning how to be in a relationship. But they were learning together, growing together, building something solid and lasting. And that was everything. The following Saturday brought Julian's biggest test yet, a major charity gala. He'd been attending these events for years, always alone, always cold and unapproachable. This year would be different. This year, Simone would be beside him. "Are you sure about this?" Simone asked when Julian told her about the event. "These high society things. I've never been to anything like that." They were in his office, sharing their daily coffee. Julian set down his cup and took her hands. "I'm sure. I want you there. I need you there." He paused. "This is important to me, Simone. These people have only ever seen cold Julian. I want them to see me now. With you. Happy. Then I'll be there." Shopping for a dress was an adventure. Julian insisted on coming along, which meant closing down an exclusive boutique for 2 hours. Simone felt overwhelmed by the choices, the price tags that made her dizzy. "This is too much," she protested when Julian suggested a particularly expensive emerald green gown. "Nothing is too much. Not for you. Not for this." He looked at her seriously. "I know you're uncomfortable with expensive things, but this matters. Not because of money, but because it's a statement. You're important to me. I want the world to know that." Simone tried on the green dress. It was stunning, fitted at the top with a flowing skirt that made her feel like royalty. When she stepped out of the dressing room, Julian's face told her everything. "That's the one," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You're beautiful." The gala was at the city's most prestigious hotel. Julian picked Simone up in a limousine, looking devastating in a black tuxedo. When he saw her in the green dress, he paused in the doorway of her apartment. "I'm the luckiest man alive," he said simply. The hotel was magnificent, all crystal chandeliers and marble floors. People in expensive clothes mingled, drinking champagne and networking. Simone felt momentarily overwhelmed, but Julian's hand at the small of her back steadied her. "Stay close to me," he murmured. "I'll handle the socializing. You just be yourself." Heads turned as they entered. Julian Masters, attending with a date for the first time in 5 years. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Simone held her head high, remembering her mother's words about courage. "Julian, darling." A woman in her 60s approached, dripping in diamonds. "So wonderful to see you. And who is this lovely young lady?" "Mrs. Wellington. This is Simone Reynolds." Simone, Margaret Wellington, chair of the hospital board. "Lovely to meet you, dear." Mrs. Wellington's eyes were sharp, assessing. "How do you and Julian know each other?" "We met in the park," Simone said simply. "He was kind to me when I needed it, then became even kinder." Something softened in Mrs. Wellington's expression. "Kind. That's not a word people usually associate with Julian, but I can see he's different tonight. Happier. That's your doing, I suspect." "We make each other better," Julian interjected, his hand finding Simone's. The evening progressed in a blur of introductions. Business associates, society figures, charity organizers. Everyone wanted to meet the woman who changed Julian Masters. Simone handled each conversation with grace, answering questions honestly, letting her warmth shine through. At one point, they were approached by a group of young businessmen, all looking at Julian with a mixture of respect and fear. "Masters, good to see you." One of them, tall with slicked back hair, extended his hand. "I'm Trevor Morrison. We've been hoping to set up a meeting about the Henderson deal." Julian shook his hand but didn't let go of Simone. "Send a proposal to my office. We'll review it. I was hoping we could discuss it tonight. There's a lot of money involved." Julian's expression cooled slightly, the old mask threatening to return. Simone squeezed his hand gently. "Gentlemen," Simone interjected smoothly, "I'm sure Julian would love to discuss business. But tonight is about charity, about helping people in need. Maybe we could talk about what causes you're passionate about instead." Trevor looked surprised but recovered quickly. Yes, of course. We're supporting the Children's Hospital wing." "That's wonderful." Simone's smile was genuine. "Julian and I have been working with a community center that helps underprivileged kids. Maybe our organizations could partner on a project." The conversation shifted, became about collaboration instead of competition. By the time the men moved on, they were smiling, energized by possibilities. Julian looked at Simone with admiration. "How did you do that?" "Redirect their entire approach. People respond to kindness and connection. Show them you see them as partners instead of adversaries and everything changes. Your parents knew that, I think." Julian pulled her close, kissing her temple. "They did, and they'd love you." Dinner was served in a grand ballroom. Julian and Simone were seated at a table with other major donors. The conversation was lively, covering everything from business to politics to art. Simone held her own, sharing insights from her design work, talking about the community center, making people laugh with stories from teaching art classes. A man across the table, someone Julian had introduced as Richard Chin, a fellow CEO, leaned forward. "Julian, I have to say, in all the years I've known you, I've never seen you this relaxed. This happy." He smiled at Simone. "Whatever you're doing, young lady, keep doing it." "I'm just loving him," Simone said simply. Turns out that's all he needed. Someone to see him as a person instead of just a powerful CEO. Wise words. Richard raised his glass. "To love and wisdom." The table toasted. Julian's hand tightened around Simone's under the table. After dinner came speeches and the charity auction. When it was time for Julian to speak as one of the major sponsors, he stood and walked to the podium. Simone watched nervously. Public speaking wasn't his favorite thing, but she knew he was anxious. "Good evening," Julian began, his voice strong despite his nerves. 5 years ago, I stood at this podium and gave a speech about corporate responsibility and strategic philanthropy. It was a good speech, professional and polished, but it was also cold, distant. given by someone who'd forgotten why giving mattered. He paused, his eyes finding Simone in the crowd. This year, I want to talk about something different. About how one person's kindness can change everything. Several weeks ago, I met someone who reminded me that success without connection is just expensive loneliness. Someone who saw past my walls and asked if I was okay. That simple question began a transformation I didn't know I needed. Simone's eyes filled with tears as Julian continued. I've learned that charity isn't just about writing checks. It's about showing up, being present, connecting with the people you're trying to help. I've started volunteering at the community center my parents founded, teaching art to kids, listening to their stories, being part of their lives. And it's changed me more than any business deal ever could. The room was silent, everyone hanging on his words. Tonight, I'm pledging $5 million to expand after-school programs across the city. But more than that, I'm pledging my time, my presence, my commitment to being more than just a name on a check. He looked directly at Simone. Because the most important person in my life taught me that hope, love, and kindness aren't weaknesses. They're the greatest strengths we have. The room erupted in applause. Julian returned to his seat, his face flushed but smiling. Simone hugged him tightly. That was beautiful, she whispered. That was the truth. You've changed my entire life. Later, reporters approached as they were leaving. Cameras flashed. A microphone appeared in front of them. Mr. Masters, can you tell us about your date this evening? Julian pulled Simone close, facing the cameras with confidence. This is Simone Reynolds, the most important person in my life. She's taught me more about being human than I've learned in 34 years. Are you two in a relationship? We are, and I couldn't be happier about it. More questions flew, but Julian just smiled and led Simone away. In the limousine, she looked at him with wonder. You just told the world about us. Made it official. Is that okay? I didn't ask first. It's more than okay. It's perfect. Simone kissed him. You were amazing tonight. So open, so genuine. Everyone saw the real you. I was terrified, Julian admitted, standing up there and being vulnerable in front of hundreds of people. But then I looked at you and it felt right. Important. Your parents would be so proud. Not just of the money, but of you. Of the man you're becoming. Julian's eyes filled with tears, something that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. I hope so. I really hope so. At Simone's apartment, Julian walked her to the door but seemed reluctant to leave. Come up, Simone invited. We can have tea and decompress from all that society pressure. Inside, they kicked off their fancy shoes and curled up on Simone's couch with tea. The contrast between the expensive gala and this simple moment was stark but perfect. This was real. This was that. Thank you, Julian said quietly, for being with me tonight, for standing beside me while I put myself out there. I couldn't have done it without you. You could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just being together. Outside, the city hummed with late-night energy. Inside, two people who'd found each other in the strangest way held on to what they'd built. Julian's phone buzzed. He checked it and smiled. Anderson sent me a news link. We're already trending. Cold CO shows his heart at charity gala. They're calling you my mystery woman who melted the ice. Simone laughed. That's so dramatic, but accurate. Julian set his phone aside and pulled her close. You did melt the ice. Showed me I didn't have to be cold to be strong. That opening my heart wasn't weakness but courage. We did that together. I couldn't have helped if you weren't ready to change. I'm ready for more than change. I'm ready for the future. With you. If you want that too. I want that. I want everything with you. They kissed softly, sealing that promise. Tomorrow would bring more changes, more growth. The news coverage would generate attention, questions. Julian's board would wonder about his transformation. Society would gossip about the woman who changed him. But none of that mattered. What mattered was this. Two people choosing each other, choosing hope and love, choosing to be brave together. Everything else was just noise. Later, after Julian had left and Simone was getting ready for bed, her phone rang. Her mother, having seen the news coverage online. Baby girl, I just saw pictures of you at that fancy gala. You look beautiful. And that man looked at you like you hung the moon. He's amazing, Mom. So different from what people think. Because you saw the real him. That's love, baby. Seeing someone fully and loving all of it. Even the broken parts. Especially the broken parts. I do love him. All of him. I know, baby. I can hear it in your voice. And he loves you the same way. Hold on to that. Nurture it. Love like that is rare and precious. As Simone finally climbed into bed, she felt grateful beyond words. Life had brought her from desperation to joy in the span of weeks. One accidental drink of water had led to everything she'd ever wanted. Connection, love, purpose, hope. The ice had melted completely now, and underneath it was something beautiful and worth celebrating. A love that would only grow stronger, built on a foundation of kindness, patience, and the courage to be vulnerable. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new moments, but they faced them together, and that made all the difference. Monday morning brought unexpected turbulence. Julian arrived at his office to find Anderson waiting with a grim expression. "Sir, we have a problem. The Riverside development deal fell through. Their CEO backed out last night, says he's going with one of our competitors." Julian felt his old instincts kick in. Cold calculation, ruthless strategy. He could make this hurt for their competitor, could use his influence to punish everyone involved. 5 years of built-up coldness surged back, familiar and comfortable. "Get legal on the phone," he started to say, his voice taking on that icy edge. But then he stopped. Simone's voice echoed in his head. "Hope, love, and kindness aren't weaknesses. They're the greatest strengths we have." Julian took a breath. "Actually, cancel that. Get me the Riverside CEO directly. I want to talk to him." Anderson looked surprised but nodded. 20 minutes later, Julian was on a video call with Richard Riverside, the other CEO. The man looked uncomfortable, clearly expecting Julian's legendary wrath. "Richard," Julian started, keeping his voice calm, "I heard about your decision. Before we go any further, I'd like to understand what went wrong. Not to argue or change your mind, but to learn from this." Richard's surprise was evident. Honestly, Julian, I expected you to come at me with lawyers. Only would have. Numi wants to understand. So talk to me. What made you choose our competitor?" Richard relaxed slightly. "They offered more than money. They offered partnership, a stake in future projects, collaboration instead of just a transaction. Your proposal was generous financially, but it felt cold. Like we'd just be vendors, not partners." Julian absorbed this, nodding slowly. "That's fair feedback, and you're right. My approach was transactional. I focused on numbers and forgot about relationships." He paused. "What if I came back with a revised proposal? One that focuses on true partnership?" That would be interesting. But I've already committed to the other group." "I respect that. Honor your commitment. But if you have other projects in the pipeline, I'd like to discuss them. Show you that Masters Tech can be a collaborative partner, not just a checkbook." After the call ended, Anderson was staring at him. "Sir, that was different. You just accepted losing a major deal without any retaliation, because forcing them to work with us would have created resentment. Building a real partnership for the future is worth more than winning one deal." Julian smiled. "I'm learning that relationships matter more than always winning." He called Simone immediately, needing to hear her voice. "Hey," she answered warmly. "How's your morning?" "Challenging. But I handled it differently than I would have before. Chose connection over cold strategy." "Tell me about it." Julian explained the situation, how he'd felt the pull of old patterns but chosen a new approach. Simone listened carefully. "I'm proud of you. That took real courage. You could have gone back to being cold, Julian, but you chose growth instead. It wasn't easy. Part of me wanted to crush them. But then I thought about what you'd say, what your parents would want. And the answer was clear. That's growth, Julian. Real change isn't about never feeling the old impulses. It's about choosing differently when they come up." They talked for a few more minutes before Julian had to get to a meeting, but her words stayed with him. He'd faced his first real test and passed. Not perfectly, maybe, but he'd chosen the path of connection over the path of cold isolation. Later that afternoon, Simone came up to his office for their coffee break. Julian was on his computer working through something. She set down the coffee and peered over his shoulder. "What are you working on?" "A new proposal framework for all our future deals. Building and partnership structures, collaboration opportunities, making sure we approach business relationships as actual relationships, not just transactions." He looked up at her. "You've changed how I think about everything, even business." Simone kissed the top of his head. "Good business is about people anyway. You're just remembering that." They sat together, drinking coffee and working side by side. Julian on his computer, Simone sketching designs on her tablet. The comfortable silence of two people who didn't need constant conversation to feel connected. A knock on the door interrupted them. Anderson entered with an apologetic expression. Sir, the board is requesting an emergency meeting. They've heard about the Riverside deal. They want to discuss your recent approach to business. Julian's jaw tightened. The board. They'd noticed his changes and weren't happy about them. Old Julian would have bristled, gone defensive and cold. New Julian looked at Simone, who squeezed his hand encouragingly. Tell them I'll be there in 10 minutes. After Anderson left, Julian turned to Simone. They're going to push back against the changes I'm making. Want the old ruthless approach. So show them why the new approach is better. Not just financially, but ethically. Make them see what you've seen. Will you come with me? I know it's unusual, but I could use your support. I'll be right there. The boardroom was tense when they entered. 10 older men and women, all looking stern and concerned. Julian took his seat at the head of the table, Simone standing behind him, a quiet presence. Julian, the chairman, Harold Westbrook, began. We're concerned about recent changes in your approach. The Riverside deal. I know you're concerned, Julian interrupted calmly. But I'd like to explain my thinking before you decide anything. He spent the next 20 minutes outlining his new philosophy. How building partnerships instead of just closing deals would create long-term value. How treating people with respect and kindness made better business sense than cold calculation. How his transformation was making him a better CEO, not a weaker one. You've always been ruthless, Harold observed. That's what made you successful. I was also lonely, isolated, and losing sight of why my parents built this company in the first place. They wanted to create something meaningful, not just profitable. Julian's voice was strong, confident. I'm not abandoning success. I'm redefining what success means. A company where people want to work, where partners trust us, where we make a real difference. That's worth more than any single deal. And if this softer approach costs us money, another board member challenged. Then we make less money but build something more valuable. Legacy, reputation. A company people are proud to be part of. Julian leaned forward. I've spent 5 years being cold and ruthless. The company grew, but I was miserable. I'm happier now, more creative, making better decisions. If you can't support that, we can discuss options. But I'm not going back to who I was. The room was silent. Then Harold spoke, his voice thoughtful. Your parents would be proud of you, Julian. Not for the money, but for this. For remembering their values. He looked around the table. I move that we support Julian's new approach. Give it 6 months and evaluate results. The vote was closer than Julian would have liked, but it passed. As the meeting adjourned, several board members approached him privately. You seem different, one woman said. Happier. Whatever you're doing, it suits you. Walking back to his office, Simone beside him, Julian felt lighter. He'd faced his board and held firm in his new values. It was a victory that mattered. You were amazing in there, Simone said. So strong and clear about what you believed. I had backup, Julian replied, pulling her close in the empty hallway. Knowing you were there gave me courage. You had the courage already. I just reminded you of it. That evening, Julian and Simone met at the community center. They planned to help with the dinner program, serving meals to seniors and families in need. It was grounding, being around people facing real struggles, remembering what mattered beyond boardrooms and business deals. Mrs. Garcia pulled Julian aside while Simone was helping in the kitchen. That woman loves you, she said simply, and you love her. Don't let it slip away because you're scared. I'm not scared, Julian started, then stopped. Actually, I am. Terrified. What if I mess this up? What if I revert to old patterns and hurt her? Then you apologize and do better. Love isn't about being perfect, Julian. It's about choosing each other even when things are hard. Especially when things are hard. She patted his arm. Your parents had that kind of love. Strong, real, imperfect, but enduring. You can have it too. You just have to keep choosing it. Later, driving Simone home, Julian was quiet, processing everything from the day. The dinner, the board meeting, Mrs. Garcia's words. So many challenges, so many opportunities to slip back into coldness. But he'd chosen differently every time. What are you thinking about? Simone asked. How much I love you, Julian said simply. How you've transformed my entire life. How scared I am of losing this. You're not going to lose this. We're building something strong, Julian. It can weather challenges. Promise me something, Julian said, pulling up to her building. Promise that if I start getting cold again, if I slip back into old patterns, you'll call me on it. Don't let me hide behind walls again. I promise, and you promise me the same. If I start doubting or pulling away, remind me why we're doing this. They kissed, sealing their promises. Inside her apartment, Simone reflected on the day. Julian had faced major challenges and handled them with grace, choosing connection over cold calculation every time. He was growing, becoming more himself. Not the frozen CO, but the warm, passionate man he'd been before grief locked him away. Her phone buzzed. "Julian, thank you for today. For supporting me, believing in me, loving me. I'm stronger with you in my life." She responded, "We're stronger together. That's the whole point. Sleep well. I love you. Love you too." More than words can say. As Simone got ready for bed, she thought about how far they'd both come. From a chance meeting by a lake to this. Deep, real love that was changing both their lives. There would be more challenges ahead, more times when old patterns threatened to resurface. But they'd face them together, choosing hope and love every time. That was what mattered. Not perfection, but progress. Not avoiding challenges, but meeting them with courage and kindness. Building something beautiful one choice at a time. 3 months had passed since the board meeting, and winter was turning to spring. The changes in Julian continued to ripple outward. Masters Tech had signed 3 major partnership deals, all structured around collaboration instead of cold transactions. Employee satisfaction surveys showed dramatic improvement. The company was thriving, but more importantly, the people in it were happier. Julian and Simone had fallen into a beautiful rhythm. Weekday coffee breaks, evenings at the community center, weekends exploring the city or cooking together. They'd moved slowly, building trust and intimacy in layers. Julian had started keeping clothes at Simone's apartment, and she had her own space in his penthouse. They weren't living together officially, but they were moving in that direction naturally. One Wednesday morning, Julian called Anderson into his office. His assistant found him staring at a small velvet box on his desk. "Sir? I need your help with something," Julian said, looking up with an expression Anderson had never seen before. Nervous, vulnerable, hopeful. "I'm going to propose to Simone, and I want it to be perfect." Anderson's professional mask cracked into a genuine smile. "Finally, I was wondering when you'd ask." "You knew." "Sir, everyone knows. The way you look at each other. How you've changed because of her. It's obvious you're going to spend your lives together." Julian opened the box, revealing a ring. A simple but stunning emerald-cut diamond with a platinum band. Classic, elegant, not ostentatious. Perfect for Simone. "I want to propose at the park, the bench where we met. Can you help me arrange something?" "I'd be honored, sir." Over the next week, Julian planned meticulously but tried to act normal around Simone. It was harder than he expected. Every time he looked at her, he wanted to just ask to skip the elaborate setup and propose right there. But he wanted this to be special. She deserved that. Saturday morning, Julian texted Simone, "Meet me at the park at 2 p.m. The usual bench. Just want to spend some time together." Simone responded immediately, "Perfect. See you there." Julian arrived early, his heart pounding. The bench looked different than usual. Someone, Anderson's work, had arranged simple but beautiful flowers around it. Nothing too elaborate, just touches of color and life. A picnic basket sat on the bench, containing Simone's favorite foods. Julian wore dark jeans and a deep green sweater, her favorite color on him. He checked the ring box in his pocket for the 100th time. Took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would define the rest of his life. And he was ready. Terrified but ready. Simone appeared on the path, wearing a bright blue spring dress that made her glow. When she saw the setup, her eyes widened. "Julian, what's all this?" "Come sit with me," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. They sat on the bench, the same bench where everything had started months ago. Julian took her hands, his gray eyes locked on her brown ones. "Do you remember the first time we were here?" he asked. "Of course. You were sad and angry, and I drank your water." Julian smiled. "You asked if I was okay. No one had asked me that in 5 years. You saw through all my walls in 30 seconds. Where is this going?" Simone asked softly, though her eyes suggested she knew. "That morning, I was the most alone I'd ever been. Successful, powerful, completely empty inside. I built walls so high I couldn't see the sky anymore. Couldn't feel anything except cold, gray nothing." Julian's thumb traced patterns on her hand. "Then you came along, asking questions, bringing coffee, being kind when I didn't deserve it. You didn't try to tear down my walls. You just kept showing up until I wanted to let you in." Tears were forming in Simone's eyes. "Julian, these last months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've taught me how to feel again, how to connect, how to be human. You've shown me that strength isn't about being cold. It's about being brave enough to be vulnerable, to let people in, to choose love even when it's scary. Julian slid off the bench, kneeling in front of her. Simone's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling over. Simone Reynolds, you are the most important person in my life. You're my best friend, my partner, my reminder of what matters. You see me, all of me, the good, the broken, the part still healing. And you love me anyway. He pulled out the ring box, opening it. I want to spend the rest of my life loving you back, being brave with you, building something beautiful together. Will you marry me? Yes, Simone said immediately, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, of course yes. Julian's hands shook as he slid the ring onto her finger. Then he was standing, pulling her into his arms, kissing her deeply. Around them, people who'd been pretending not to watch burst into applause. Julian didn't care. He held the woman he loved, feeling more complete than he ever had. I love you, he whispered against her hair. So much. You changed my entire world. I love you too. More than I knew was possible. They sat on the bench, holding each other, watching the lake sparkle in the afternoon sun. The same lake where Julian had been so alone months ago. Now he'd never be alone again. When did you know? Simone asked eventually. That you wanted to marry me? Honestly? The art gallery, our first real date. Watching you talk about paintings, seeing how you lit up with passion. I knew then that I wanted to see that for the rest of my life. Julian kissed her forehead. But I waited because I wanted to be sure I was ready. That I could be the partner you deserve. You already are. You have been from the start. They spent the afternoon at the park, eating from the picnic basket, talking about their future. Wedding plans, where they'd live, dreams they wanted to pursue together. Everything felt possible now. The world was full of color and promise. That evening, Julian took Simone to dinner at a quiet restaurant. But first he had a call to make. He dialed, and when a warm voice answered, he smiled. Mrs. Reynolds? This is Julian Masters. I'm calling to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. I know I should have called before proposing, but I was too nervous to wait. Simone's mother laughed on the other end. Julian, I've been expecting this call for weeks. And the answer is yes, with my blessing and my joy. You love my daughter. That's all that matters to me. I do. More than anything. Then welcome to the family, son. Take care of her heart. It's precious. I will. I promise. When he handed the phone to Simone, she talked to her mother for 20 minutes, crying happy tears, making plans for her mother to visit soon. Julian watched, feeling grateful beyond words. He was gaining not just a wife, but a family. Connection. Everything he'd been missing for 5 years. The following Monday, the office buzzed with news of their engagement. Julian called an all-hands meeting, something he'd never done before. The entire company gathered in the main atrium, curious and slightly nervous. Julian stood on the platform with Simone beside him, their hands linked. He looked out at hundreds of faces, employees who'd feared him for years, and felt genuine affection for them all. Good morning, everyone. I know you're all busy, so I'll be brief. I wanted to share some personal news. Simone and I are engaged. Applause erupted. Julian waited for it to die down, smiling. I also want to say something else. Many of you have noticed changes in how this company operates over the past few months. More collaboration, better communication, focus on people instead of just profits. That's going to continue, because I've learned something important. Success isn't just about money or power. It's about building something meaningful. Creating a place where people want to work, where they feel valued, where they can grow. He looked at Simone, then back at the crowd. My fiancée taught me that. She showed me that kindness and strength aren't opposites. That connection makes us better, not weaker. I'm committing to being a better CEO. More present, more human, more focused on what really matters. Thank you all for your patience as I figured that out. The applause this time was thunderous. People were smiling, genuinely happy. Patricia from the design department shouted, "We love you both." After the meeting, employees came up to congratulate them. Julian shook hands, accepted hugs, remembered names. This was who he wanted to be. Connected, present, real. That afternoon, Julian and Simone visited the community center to share their news. The kids threw an impromptu celebration, making engagement cards and sharing cupcakes. Mrs. Garcia pulled them both into a tight hug. Your parents would be dancing with joy, she told Julian. This is everything we wanted for you. Love, happiness, purpose. I wish they could meet her, Julian said quietly. They know, sweetheart. Wherever they are, they know. and they're so proud. Over the next months, wedding planning consumed their free time. They decided on an intimate ceremony, just close friends and family. The community center kids would be flower girls and ring bearers. Mrs. Garcia would read a poem. Everything would be simple, meaningful, focused on love instead of spectacle. Julian continued his transformation. He hired a VP to handle daily operations, freeing himself to focus on big picture strategy and community involvement. He and Simone started a foundation together, combining their passion for helping underprivileged communities. They spent hours at the community center teaching art, mentoring kids, being present. The coldness that had defined Julian for 5 years was gone completely. In its place was warmth, compassion, joy. People who'd known him before could hardly recognize him. But those who knew him now, truly knew him, saw the man who'd always been underneath. The man his parents had raised. The man Simone had helped him remember. 6 months after the proposal, on a perfect spring day, Julian and Simone stood in the community center's garden, surrounded by flowers and loved ones. Julian wore a navy suit. Simone wore a simple white dress with emerald green accents. They'd written their own vows. Julian at first, his voice steady but emotional. Simone, when I met you, I was the coldest I'd ever been. Frozen solid, convinced that isolation kept me safe. You melted that ice with patience, kindness, and an unwillingness to accept my walls as permanent. You saw who I could be and loved me into becoming that person. Today, I promise to keep growing, keep opening up, keep choosing connection over fear. I promise to love you in actions, not just words. To show up, be present, be brave. You are my home, my heart, my future. I love you completely. Simone's turned, tears streaming down her face. Julian, you gave me hope when I had none. You saw value in me when I was struggling to see it myself. You've shown me that real strength is vulnerability, that courage is opening your heart even when you're scared. You've taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other every day, growing together, being patient with the hard parts. Today I promise to keep choosing you, keep believing in us, keep reminding you of who you are when you forget. You are my partner, my love, my greatest adventure. I love you endlessly. They exchanged rings, simple bands engraved with the date they met. When the officiant pronounced them married, Julian kissed Simone deeply, both crying happy tears. Around them, everyone cheered. The community center kids threw flower petals. Mrs. Garcia dabbed her eyes with a tissue. The reception was joyful and intimate. Dancing, laughter, stories shared. Julian's business associates mixed with community center families, walls breaking down everywhere. This was what his parents had believed in. Connection across differences. Love as the great equalizer. Late in the evening, Julian and Simone slipped away to the garden, needing a quiet moment. They sat on a bench, Simone's head on Julian's shoulder, both exhausted and blissfully happy. We did it, Simone murmured. We're married. Best decision I ever made. Well, second best. First was getting that coffee in the park and being too cold to throw it away when you drank from it. Simone laughed. You could have thrown it away. You chose not to. That's when this really started. You choosing kindness over cold rejection. I chose right. Julian pulled her closer. So what now, Mrs. Masters? Now we keep doing what we've been doing. Loving each other, helping people, building something beautiful. Just now we get to do it as husband and wife. I like the sound of that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. The community center glowed with lights and laughter behind them. Their future stretched out ahead, full of promise and possibility. Julian thought about the man he'd been 6 months ago. Cold, isolated, convinced he was protecting himself by keeping everyone out. He'd been so wrong. The walls hadn't protected him. They'd imprisoned him. Simone had shown him the way out, but he'd had to choose to walk through that door. Choose vulnerability over safety. Choose love over fear. And now look where they were. Married, happy, surrounded by people they cared about. Building a life of meaning and connection. His company was thriving. Their foundation was helping hundreds of people. The community center was expanding thanks to their support. They were making a real difference together. Thank you, Julian said softly. For what? For seeing me. For not giving up when I was difficult. For showing me what love looks like. For changing my entire world. You changed mine too. We saved each other, really. You gave me stability and hope when I was drowning. I gave you connection and warmth when you were frozen. We found each other exactly when we needed to. Faith. Maybe. Or maybe just kindness and love doing what they do best. Creating something beautiful from broken pieces. Julian kissed the top of her head. I love you, Simone Masters. I love you too, Julian Masters. Forever. Later, much later, they returned to the reception for a final dance. The song was slow and romantic. As they swayed together, Julian caught Mrs. Garcia's eye. She was smiling through tears, mouthing words he understood perfectly. Your parents would be so proud. Julian nodded, holding his wife close. He hoped they would be. Hoped they could see him now, happy and whole again. Living the values they taught him. Building a life of meaning. Loving deeply and openly. The song ended. The reception wound down. Julian and Simone said their goodbyes, thanking everyone for celebrating with them. They left in a shower of bubbles and well wishes, heading to the airport for a honeymoon in a quiet beach town where they could just be together. On the plane, Simone fell asleep with her head on Julian's shoulder. Julian stayed awake, watching her breathe, feeling grateful beyond measure. This woman had saved his life without even trying, just by being kind, by seeing him as human instead of untouchable, by refusing to accept his walls as permanent. He'd been so lost, and she'd helped him find his way back. Not to who he'd been before his parents died, but to someone better. Someone who'd learned from pain instead of being destroyed by it. Someone who understood that love and vulnerability were strengths, not weaknesses. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, of fear, of wanting to retreat back into coldness. But they'd worked through it together, choosing each other every time. Building trust and intimacy slowly, carefully, solidly. And now they had forever. A lifetime of moments like this. Quiet connection, shared joy, building something beautiful together. They'd faced challenges, certainly. Life always brought challenges. But they faced them as a team, with hope and love leading the way. Julian closed his eyes, finally allowing himself to sleep. When he woke, it would be to a new day. A new beginning. The first day of the rest of his life with the woman who changed everything. And it would be perfect. Not because everything would be easy, but because they'd face it together. With kindness, hope, and love. The three things that mattered most. The three things that had brought them together and would keep them together forever. The plane flew through the night, carrying them toward their future. Behind them, the city sparkled with lights. The community center continued its work. Masters Tech thrived under new leadership philosophies. Lives were changed by the foundation's efforts. All because one morning, a woman drank a stranger's water and dared to ask if he was okay. All because a frozen man decided to answer honestly. All because both were brave enough to build a bridge across the divide of loneliness. Love had won. Hope had prevailed. Kindness had transformed everything. And that was the greatest success of all.